Oh, good? Okay. Welcome, everyone. I am Cassidy Daly. I work at Centrifuge. We're a team that used to mostly be based in Berlin, but now we're kind of based all over. Corona either forced us or helped us do that, based on your perspective. Today I'm going to talk about bridging DeFi liquidity from Ethereum to Polkadot. Specifically, I really want to talk about why that's important, and then I'll go into a little bit of the how that could work going forward. So, I really think interoperability is the key to increasing liquidity in DeFi. That's sort of my thesis. Hopefully I can convince you why that's super important, and maybe prove to you how that's been the case over the last 5 or so years. So I think the reason why it really matters, I think the more connected that chains, protocols, Dapps are, the greater this flow of liquidity will be, and that's super important. That the flow is actually then enabling more growth into the DeFi ecosystem. And some of the reasons why I think this really matters is that as a DeFi ecosystem, we really want to break the banks, not become them and reinvent the wheel here. We also want to open up access to the entire system. I think a lot of the reason why DeFi started was because people felt marginalized or like they didn't have access to the tools that a lot of other larger businesses or other people might have. I think competition is really essential for our financial system as it exists today to function. And that's something that's really lacking in TradFi or traditional finance. And there's also a huge issue with pricing the risk and pricing the interest that is charged to users for loans, for assets. So diving in a little bit more, when I say break the banks, I really mean replace the banks. Get rid of them, create something new, not necessarily from ground zero, right? We don't want to completely reinvent the wheel, but we want to do things better than they did. And one of those huge things is walled gardens, like just the lack of an incentive for a bank to actually care about a new user because they've just got this moat of liquidity around them. So it creates a lack of incentives to be efficient or fair, and that creates massive inefficiencies in today's traditional financial world. This open access is sort of a point within that point. A lot of people and small, even medium-sized businesses just don't have access to financing from today's traditional banks. And the whole ethos of DeFi is to open up this access for absolutely everyone. And I think this moat for liquidity, these walled gardens, also creates a barrier to access for all of these users. Competition is really essential within all of this. So when you have these sort of moats, you're not forced to give users a better price for a loan. You're basically the only bank that they can go to, and if you say no, they're just out of luck. And I think a truly free and open system will allow for true competition across services, and that will create better allocation of resources to find the real price of risk for these assets. I think one of the reasons why traditional finance could argue back the other way and say, give a reason as to why they do this, it is really hard for them in today's system to devote enough resources to actually finding the price of risk for a small individual. It's just not worth it to them. It costs too much for the bank to do this. But if we had a truly open system, it could allow for more and more players to come in even on that side of things. And I think that's really where DeFi fits into this. And I think last there, just diving into this, accurate pricing element of it, I think DeFi is already really open for the liquidity providers on the one side. We have a lot of people coming in now with capital, and DeFi liquidity has really skyrocketed in the past few years. And on the other hand, we don't really have a lot of opportunity for liquidity seekers to really find funding. And I think this is something that interoperability can really improve, not only allowing this capital on the one side to flow freely, but also to be able to allow users to find the lowest cost of capital wherever that happens to be. So one of the ways that we've, I think, in the Ethereum ecosystem, really done an amazing thing here is with standards and creating standards that everyone can use. Because I think when you have a standard, that's when all projects can really be set from ground zero to be able to be interoperable with each other, to have integrations from day one. And I think that's super important. ERC20 is one of those first really big standards. Maybe the best thing since sliced bread. And they're really a key building block to the growth of DeFi liquidity in the entire Ethereum ecosystem. And as I said, I think it doesn't matter how good the standard is. People can argue back and forth about improving the standards that we do have, but what matters is that we do have a standard here. And I think this has had an enormous impact in the DeFi liquidity in the Ethereum ecosystem. So in 2019, compared to today, I mean, we've seen exponential growth, not only of this total value locked in DeFi, but the number of projects that have been able to spring up because of how easy it is to integrate with each other, that you're able to have one protocol interacting with another and compounding the value that's locked in DeFi is what's creating this sort of skyrocket here that we can see. And I think that's something that will continue going further. So just a little overview of the impact that the ERC20 token standard does have. ICOs, of course, is super exciting. Bancor coming in 2017, Dharma, Uniswap, and then this huge DeFi summer in 2020. And I think it's really been an endless DeFi summer. And that's what I'm really excited about, is to continue this, not only in the Ethereum ecosystem, but going forward into the Polkadot ecosystem and many more to come. Polkadot, speaking from Centrifuge's experience building there, but I think the real key here is that we're not walling ourselves in to any one place to find DeFi liquidity. And that's really what's going to impact it for the end user of our products. So I think ERC20 has really been Ethereum's magic weapon. I think I would argue, and I hope I showed a little bit, that it's really been a key to the growth of the Ethereum ecosystem as a whole and the DeFi ecosystem within that. So then taking a step back and saying, well, how do we take this forward? What's the next step? How do we make this a really endless DeFi summer with a search for the perfect yield? The standards that we can tackle next, I think, are cross-chain communication. There are a lot of great talks that have happened here at UCC specifically around that, and a lot of the work that's going into creating standards there. I think interoperable standards on different chains are super important. One of the things that's being worked on is NFTs, and having a standard on every different chain for how those NFTs could move from one chain to another. Fiat on and off ramps are super important. I think a lot of DeFi has sort of glossed over that aspect in the most recent past. But for Centrifuge, it's a huge deal and something that we really focus on having real users at the end of it. And I think wallets are also something, a standard that has had a lot of growth and is definitely something that can aid to this interoperability. So Centrifuge has worked together with ChainSafe to create a bridge from our Centrifuge chain to Ethereum. And so this is what we use to bridge the DeFi liquidity that exists on Ethereum today to the assets that we finance on Centrifuge chain. So this has been sort of a struggle, to be honest with you. It's really hard to have a standard here, and I think I'm really excited to see the development that happens with bridges going forward. For example, I saw that Near was talking about their Rainbow Bridge. I know that Polkadot is working with Snowfork to create a standardized bridge there, and I think this is something that, as an ecosystem, I'm hoping to convey is super important. This is something that we can't just brush to the side, because this is going to be really pivotal in increasing the liquidity in DeFi as a whole for the entire ecosystem. I think one of the reasons why it's so important is because you really can't do it by yourself. This is just an overview of how you could use Centrifuge, and there's so many different projects and interactions that happen. So you buy ETH to pay for gas so that you can mint an NFT on Centrifuge, which today exists on Tinlink. You lock it up in a Centrifuge pool, and with that, you can borrow DAI from MakerDAO. All of these different steps require an integration. They require this interoperability. Then you can swap that DAI to USDC, that fiat on off-ramp, using pair swap, curve, 1inch, and then use Circle to convert that to fiat. And I think this whole flow touches so many different moving parts in the whole ecosystem, and I think every project here at ECC would be able to show a similar sort of image of how many different layers they're going through, how many different projects they interact with. So you really can't do it by yourself. So Centrifuge that's really been one of our focuses, is trying to find as many different players in this ecosystem that we can really collaborate with, find standards with, and I think being a part of the community is just as important as working on our own product in a lot of ways. So really trying to develop with other teams out there what these standards can be, work together, and cooperate, even though there might be some competition there underneath it all. I think at the end of the day, this is really going to help all of us. So this is our Tinlink App, just what it looks like today. About 26 million of DAI in value locked. And I think that really wasn't possible, right, without a lot of other projects and integrations out there. And I think this is super exciting for us. And I'm really looking forward to the next step of growing this together with all the other projects in this ecosystem. So I'll just leave it there with a thank you. I don't know if I have any time. No? If anyone has a burning question, maybe I'll take one or two. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm coming.
Hello. What do you think this integration between different blockchains and liquidity pools, like how does Centrifuge think about sort of MEV in this intersection of security models and liquidity pools world?
That's a tough question.
I could ask an easier one, or
yeah, maybe do you have an easier one?
no?
I feel like that's a longer conversation.
Okay.
I mean, just to put it short, I mean, there's definitely risks in this system, and we try to mitigate that within the Centrifuge Dapps itself. So one of the ways that we target that is having epochs in our system. So preventing transactions from going through until an epoch is over and having all of the transactions come in and then executing a specific order of them. And I think it does make it more complex, that we're forced to think about these things and create a dApp that's able to work around the sort of challenges of our ecosystem. And I think something like bridging will definitely add complexity to that. So hopefully not more than we can handle. I think not. I think we'll be able to find a way around it. But it will definitely be a challenge. And I think that's where cooperation with other teams is really key, because we're not the only ones thinking about this, right? And for us to be involved in conversations with everyone else focusing on the same issue is super important. That's why we're here at ECC, and that's why I love this event so much, is being able to have conversations about this sort of stuff and say, hey, how are you solving this issue? Or how have you come across this? And how are you thinking about this problem? And I think that's super important. Okay, cool. I will leave it there. Thank you, everyone. You can reach me on Twitter there. I'll come say hi.